Now, I have a dynamic group of colleagues up here, and this is going to be a rock and roll panel. We've set our goal to make this dynamic and interactive, and I know that it will be for you. My role is to keep things moving, keep an eye on the time, and to give everyone's voice a chance to be heard around numerous questions and foci. So we're going to first meet the panelists, and then I'm going to ask them to share a little short comment on what resonated for them when they listened to the voices. Listen to those varied, very diverse, spectacular voices of those new teachers. I was really touched by that audio. It connected for me, not only in my head, but in my heart, and took me back to what it was like when I first started and the connections with what it's like today. So if things are going correctly, there will be a slide up there. Yay, with the panelists on it. If you want more bio on our panelists, just turn to the second page of your program and you can read along. But at this point, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. And I was going to do it alphabetically, but we had a little negotiation outside, and Linda is going to go first. So Linda, I know you have a title, and I want you to expand on it if you wish, but you're here to present your thoughts on induction and mentorship and where you have lived and played out this story in your life. So my question is here for you and all the panelists is, what made you choose to come tonight, and why does this topic really matter to you?
So this is the surprise question.
Yes.
And I actually didn't volunteer to go first, but here I am. So this is a surprise question, so I'm going to take a moment to think about. I'm here. Allison asked me to be here. And I was delighted to say yes. And this was about a year ago, or about the time that people were starting to think about this conference. And I've been working in rural areas now as a teacher educator and as the kind of rural professor for UBC, working in all kinds of rural communities across the province. And what I've noticed is that we're getting there with conversations about mentoring with early career teachers. But we've got lots of pockets where it's either not happening or it's not happening consistently for new people coming into the system. And in the rural world in particular, there are different kinds of challenges than perhaps in the Lower Mainland or in places nearer to city centers. So mentorship takes on a lot of different nuances in rural communities. And I think what matters so much to me about it is to see when mentorship works and when the relationships that are happening in schools involve a lot of what was being said on that video, a sense of autonomy tempered with a sense of support. And it's been kind of an ongoing adventure for me to visit school communities to see what's happening with new teachers and how they're negotiating and navigating that terrain. And it matters a lot to our kids. It matters a lot to the profession. So that's why I'm here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're going to meet everyone before we start building on some of those ideas. So Glenn, what brings you here tonight? And what matters to you about this topic?
See, I thought you were going to go counterclockwise.
I'm going to mix it up.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it's multiple reasons. One, we are very lucky because the Federation and UBC and the Superintendent's Association has generously received funding from the province to support the new teacher mentorship program over the past couple of years, and that work is going to continue. So it's part of my responsibility in terms of what I'm doing right now. But in a profession where we're losing so many people in their first 5 years, and this isn't just a BC situation, it's across Canada and North America, the social investment that goes into getting young people from undergraduate programs into bachelors of education and then into the system, to lose so many of them for a whole variety of reasons, some of which are in our control collectively as a province, as a workforce. What can we do to help sustain people and get them through that period of time? I know in my own situation, I graduated relatively recently in 2000 from McGill, and I started off at the secondary level at an interesting time in Quebec where all the Catholic and Protestant boards were being completely reconfigured into language-based boards. And I never thought I'd be in an elementary school, let alone working with little kids. But when I came out here, I found myself, like a lot of the people who responded on the audio, thrown into all sorts of situations I wouldn't have anticipated. And I was fortunate enough to have had a principal and a vice principal who put in the time and the effort to really sort of nurture me in that circumstance, even though it wasn't what I had trained to do or thought I'd be doing. And I also was on a school staff where there was the time and the trust with one another to make that happen as well, with the support of my teacher colleagues. But the situation has changed quite a bit in the intervening years, and in my current responsibilities, I have the privilege to travel around the province and see what teaching looks like for a lot of people, and it could be really scary. So the words precarious and vulnerable are definitely constant around the province.
Okay, thank you very much. So where should I go next?
I think Monica.
I think Monica too. Monica, what brings you here tonight? And you were invited, of course, but why did you say yes?
I'm glad that we all have the same question, because Nancy said, I'm going to give you each a surprise question. So by now, at least I've thought a little bit of what I'm going to say. I'm really pleased to say our district has been, I'd say, a pioneer in mentoring programs. We started in the late 80s, early 90s with a really strong mentoring program that's gotten even stronger. So Norma Jamieson specifically, who's doing a lot of work now, invited me to come be part of this panel quite some time ago. Now, she did not mention it's a 2-hour panel. That was a bit of a surprise, but we'll see how that goes. But really, I was really pleased to do it because the power of mentoring and the value-added component is for an organization, which from my perspective is really important, is, well, I was telling Nancy, we actually ran into each other in the washroom, and I said, you know, when we do budget discussions, which are never any fun, you're always having to cut back, the mentoring budget, you do not touch that. It never even comes up. It's institutionalized in our district. So to be part of a provincial conversation on what I think is such an amazingly strong program and so necessary, I'm quite passionate about it. So I'm really pleased to be here to hear what people have to say and engage with questions and answers and just celebrate the fact that mentoring is getting this kind of attention and status.
Okay, thank you. So we have a couple left. I'm going to go to Melody next.
I'm here because my personal mentor, Nancy Carl from Staff Development at Coquitlam School District, asked me to be a part of this wonderful panel. I met Nancy first when I was the TTOC chair for the CTA many, many years ago. And my passion is to advocate for the disenchanted, the vulnerable. When I was the chairperson many years ago, we didn't quite yet have the mentoring program. And so my committee and I were inundated with questions from new teachers that didn't understand how the system worked. The only contact that they had with the school district was a robot voice that called them at 5 p.m. or 5 a.m. in the morning. And it was a lot. I could hear the anxiety, and they needed that support. So having met Nancy, and she wanted to start this mentoring learning team with the Mentoring Matters learning team, which I've been now working with her for over 6 years. It's as a facilitator, it's been a wonderful blessing because Coquitlam is a wonderful district to work for, where even our district leadership team, our DLT, recognizes the value of mentorship. Right? When Maureen was there, you supported the program immensely, and we're so blessed to have mentoring in our district. I remember when I first started teaching, straight out of PDP, I graduated August, and I got a contract in October. And I was in a hot, sweaty, metal portable with 30 middle schoolers going through puberty at the same time, and my team was inside the building. So I had 1,000,001 questions, and 1,000,001 questions that I didn't know I had. And I remember treading water that first year. That was really tough. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think you'll be starting to hear a theme here that for each of the panelists so far, and I'm sure Maureen will build on this, there has been someone who's nudged them, connected with them, being a mentor, formal or informal, to support them along the way. So I'd like to introduce Maureen Dockendorf next.
I can't believe I have the last voice. How amazing is that? I'm here because collectively we can change the world and we can improve life chances for every kid. And I am so blessed to actually be part of this group that I have met and worked with in various contexts. And I'm here tonight because I believe so strongly in mentorship in all forms. I believe that we need to push this into a bigger world. We are watching right now the Ministry of Education fund 4 networks, clearly. So I'll just get right to the point. We need to advocate, and we need to be funded for a teacher mentorship network in this province. I propose that it's framed in the work that Charlie Naylor and I have been involved in for a long time, and many of you have too, that we gather together teachers, practicing incredible teachers in BC, and new teachers that are entering our system, and we form groups that are focused on inquiry, and we work collaboratively, and we work together. We work over time. We meet regularly, and we focus on quality instruction in everything that we do. We work collaboratively together, and we have released time to get together and be able to do that. So I'm planting this seed right here, and I think as a network, we need to move this forward because this is the most important thing, teacher mentorship, in the work that we do. And we need to work together as a network and move it forward. And it's not good enough. You heard those voices. This can't be the isolated pieces. This needs to be system-wide. We need to think systems. We need to think collaboratively. We need to build these networks. So I, radically propose tonight, I don't think it's that radical, that we actually formalize a network around teacher mentorship, because indeed, learning from the incredible teachers that we have in our province, for people that are beginning, like, I don't get this. We need to work together. We need to learn from one another. We need to build on that expertise, and it needs to be funded by the Ministry of Education, and they better do it. Done. I could lose my job tomorrow, but I'm okay. I'm close to retirement. I'm all right.
Use that hashtag to put that out, Maureen said.
Go for it. It's a good place to be.
All right, so would any of the panelists like to build on anything that has been said in the introduction before we move on to a slightly different area? The floor is open.
Well, Nancy, I think the commonalities in our conversation, we're coming at it from different angles, but the common threads are there. And the excitement in the new teachers' voices and the anxiety, it just resonates with all of us. And I don't know, but my job came like that too. I just out of the blue, like, I've got a job. And the next day is, OMG, I've got a job, now what am I going to do? And you've heard that over and over again. And that's part of kind of the excitement of teaching. But I think what we're talking about is, and the other thing that used to amaze me is the paperwork. Like, how do you do that? Like, first homeroom, I thought, what is this? I'm just be teaching. So all these things, you need a support system to help you make sense of it right from the very beginnings and all the way through, so that you chart your professional growth in that interactive way.
Not only is it very relevant for brand new teachers, but in the light of everything happening, there are mid-phase teachers between the years of 5 and 10, let's say, that are starting new assignments because of layoffs and cutbacks. And what we see in our mentoring learning team is we no longer meet these neophyte teachers within the 0 to 5 years. We're having a surge of teachers that are mid-phase teachers being thrown into new assignments due to recall that are struggling. And what do you do as a teacher when you are trying to deepen your inquiry and deepen your practice, but you are essentially learning new curricula, learning new material as if you were a first-year teacher again? And how disheartened can you be, right? We are struggling with that very problem right now. And then from one of the voices that we heard is one of the new teachers said, well, I've been subbing for 6 years and I finally got a new contract and I didn't know what I was doing. And on the other side, you see TTOCs that have been subbing for 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and they are just trying to survive financially at this point. They are treading water. They no longer have the drive to deepen their inquiry and look even into Pro-D, because right now they're trying to stick with their passion, which is to teach, but how do they go look for Pro-D when they have to go through the steps of applying for it, or if they're not called in, they don't even get to go to the Pro-D sessions. And then it's that conundrum that we also have to look at right now.
All right, so just as I offered earlier, if you chose to come tonight, what motivated you to spend a Thursday evening here besides this fabulous hotel and this wonderful dinner? And I just want you to reflect for a minute, not necessarily chat at your table. But I'm thinking that underneath all of these contextual factors and what we notice and observe in the changing faces and voices of our teachers, there's a deep commitment to being here and doing, as Maureen and others have said, making change that will last and be sustainable and never have to come again to start over and re-energize a network for our early career teachers. In a way, I think you are the leadership. When someone asked me who's in the room, I know some of you personally, I know some of you through work I've done in training, and I know that you are the leaders, the mentors of the support system for these new teachers. And I want to applaud you for being here and saying, so if there's a charge to throw out, it's to all of us and to keep doing the good work you're doing. The stats in the backgrounder said that 30 districts out of 60 have some kind of mentorship program. That was a little while ago. I think those stats were done in maybe 2010. I think there is a groundswell of growth coming back again, and that many of you have renewed, ongoing, keeping going programs, and there are perhaps a larger percentage of a foundation out there for building and growing a provincial network. So I just want to say we are all in a leadership mode here to reflect on not only from the life of the teachers, but what is it we can do and do more of. So in asking that, then I'm going to move from the stance of the voices of the new teachers to ask the panel to put the frame of we're the leadership, we're the support. What are the challenges? What are the challenges out there that we face? And of course, resourcing, i.e. money, could be resourcing, finding the time, dealing with the massive number of shifts and changes everybody's dealing with, can immediately feel like obvious challenges and barriers. But I wonder if we could go a little deeper and say, okay, what's getting in the way of building, supporting, growing a interconnected, sustainable culture of induction, and mentorship. So, panelists, that was your backgrounder. And I think this time we will throw it open to whoever who'd like to start. And I also like to say to you, if you want to engage the audience, we invite you to take some cards that I understand are on your tables. Is that correct? Blank cards. I don't know what color they are. Would someone tell me? Oh, white. Okay, white cards. Great. And those are for you to write a question for the panel. We want to get some interaction going here. And from your perspective, if you have a question, please hand it to Anne or Allison, Anne or Norma, and they're going to collect them and bring them up so we can start having a truly dynamic conversation here from your point of view and from the panelists. So back to the challenges as we face these. Glenn's ready to go.
Sure. Well, I know Nancy said money in her introduction, and I'm not going to dwell on that, but it is an important aspect in a number of ways. So there's the sort of, the easy way to approach it. The fact is, operating grants to school districts for next school year are exactly the same as this school year. And so that puts school districts in a really difficult position right now in terms of having to make choices around what they keep and what they cut. Because, of course, everything's getting more expensive. And in order for districts to pay for it, they have to get rid of something. And so we've seen what's happened to districts in the Lower Mainland, say, where they've had to eliminate almost all of their district-level mentor positions that they might have to support newer teachers or teachers new to their assignment and everything. But it also limits the ability to sort of scale up the programs that are already there and in existence, even if a district does prioritize and say, we're protecting this at all costs. There may be the willingness from all the parties involved at the local level to sort of grow it and make it available to more people, but that's fettered by the money. But the other piece about funding that sometimes is forgotten about and gets lost sort of in news stories where they want everything in 140 characters is the reality that the people who may need mentoring the most are the ones who are in completely different assignments each year.
Yeah.
And so even if there's the ability to provide them long-term support and mentoring, say over 3 or 4 years, they might be teaching grade 4 this year, but next year they're teaching the grade 5 class on Mondays and Tuesdays, and on Wednesday they're at a completely different school, and maybe in the afternoon they're back at their first school but doing a resource job, and that may change every year as well. There's also the realities of people's workload, because in order for me to be a mentor, there's the fact that my own teaching assignment might have become more complex and more difficult for me, and so I might be philosophically inclined to be, mentoring till the cows come home, but my actual physical and mental capability of doing that, given everything else that's being thrown at me, also might be limited. And so those are some practical realities that are connected to money, but sometimes get lost in the, is job X here, or do we retain job Y there? And we're a long way off from another change, unless there's a big shift all around.
I want to comment on that because I am aware that in Coquitlam we did a focus group, and the CTA, Teacher on Call rep, she's in the room here, Amanda, and her colleagues checked in with new teachers, and they came up with a number of issues that were on their minds. And one of the phrases that arose out of that was not growing as a professional, but feeling deprofessionalized. And it had to do with this constant new assignment, new prep, and sometimes not connecting at all with their training. And so to let teacher education programs off the hook a little here is what you graduate with as your expertise obviously doesn't always fit your assignment. So it feels, they believe, Coquitlam, help me, descending professionalization rather than growing. That can be the feeling when you're constantly prepping something outside your zone of competence. Yes. Right? I want to give one example of a teacher I knew, fabulous teacher, has a continuing contract now. They all are, but this particular one, in the morning she taught kindergarten, and in the afternoon she taught grade 9 and 10 Social studies. So there you go. That's an example I've never forgotten. As a graduated kindergarten teacher, I thought, how do you make that shift? Just one story. So over to the panel. Jump in. Who's next? Challenges.
Well, I kind of want to build on what you both said, because I think what happens in rural areas is that those kinds of uncertainties and vulnerabilities are magnified by the fact that enrollments shift and change. They're generally going down, but we're still finding it really hard to recruit certain kinds of teachers. Special ed teachers in rural areas are hard to come by. So what happens with those vulnerabilities and uncertainties in those places is that you might be teaching everything out of your area of expertise, not just one prep or two preps that might be different, but your entire assignment might be something that you weren't prepared for. As well, you've got in the rural areas, I think, a much more entangled relationship with the community, so that there's a sense in which your identity as a teacher and your conception of professionalism, your understanding of who you are, is really complicated by all of the roles you take on in the community as well. So you become somebody who is working with the kids, but also very involved with families, very involved in the civic sphere, very involved with volunteer projects out of the school. You're pulled in a lot of directions, and for new teachers who want to make a difference, obviously all teachers want to make a difference, new teachers going in and wanting to make a difference when they're being pulled in these multiple directions find it really difficult to make a path for themselves that's coherent, that's cohesive. So it's more than just the assignments. It's also the school and community cultures. And I think we have to address those things in really explicit ways, because it's kind of been in the background. And I think it's a real feature of rural life that you are many things to many people all of the time.
Thank you. I have to probe this a little bit. When you say rural, right? Could you give some examples? I mean, is Hope rural? Are the island communities that are a certain size rural? Like, what is the assumption underneath that?
Yeah, there are many assumptions.
Yeah.
And many definitions. And it's the question that always comes up. What do you mean by rural? The ministry and the government generally isn't actually willing to give a kind of quantifiable definition to what's rural. It's almost as if we want to go back to the Rural Task Force, which worked in 2003, to go around to what were considered rural districts and rural communities. And they came up with a definition that had much more to do with rural being a state of mind. And it wasn't really very helpful when we think about funding, when we think about structures. But it did kind of resonate with the experience of rural people. But I think in BC, when we talk about rural, we're talking about a sufficient distance from an urban center that it's not commutable. It's not in what StatsCan calls a metropolitan influenced zone, an MIZ. It's outside that. And that means that if you've got a child who has a particular difficulty, you're raising a child with a disability in a rural area, you're probably located in a place where it's very hard to get to specialists, where you have to come to Vancouver and stay to get diagnosis, to get help. You have to bring your family or you have to leave your job. Rural places in BC tend to go from the rural outside of Nelson, like Caslow, that isn't terribly rural because you can get to Nelson, a dynamic town of 10,000. But that's still not a large city center, and we're still looking at a place that is surrounded by natural environment, and it's very quick to make relationships with the natural environment. That's one of the strengths of rural. But when you start to try and figure out just what that is in the province, I think it's useful to think about it's the distance that you have to travel to get the kinds of services, resources, educational, cultural, and other kinds of opportunities, economic opportunities, that will allow you and your family to flourish. And it's a little more challenging with right now with fluctuating economies in rural communities. But rural are those places that are sufficiently far from urban centers that there are challenges to making that flourishing possible. And also resilience and resources of their own, but challenges.
So just before we hear from Glenn and then Melody, who've given me the elbow, how many of you would then, if you don't mind, just say, are you from a rural community? And we want to welcome you here. Fantastic. All right. So, woo-hoo. Yeah. Let's get a little more informal, you know. Shout out from the corner. Who are you over there?
Where are you from?
Where are you from? Atlan?
Way up.
Atlan, okay, great. Fantastic. You
That's
did
really
have
rural.
a long way
no
to
question
come.
there.
Right. Any others from different communities? And there was a whole mass of you over there. Yeah? Fort St. John, welcome. Any more? How about in the middle here? We had some hands. Hope. Okay, glad you're here. It is a distance. It is a distance. Yeah. Okay. And the rest of us have traveled a distance in a different way. So, Glenn, over to you on this question of building on. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I just wanted to respond a bit on the rural thing, because even within individual school districts, like Kamloops Thompson, for instance, or Prince George, there'll be the city. Schools in the city, but those districts will have rural areas. And then there's also the rural-er phenomenon, right? I mean, I see my colleagues from Vancouver Island West over there, and so the people who work in Tassis are off, at the end of the ferry line, might be really grateful to be working in Gold River, right? Whereas that's a long ways from Campbell River, and so it's relative. Rural is relative.
Rural is relative, and as one who's lived her whole life in the city, crossing from Vancouver to get to Maple Ridge or, going east-west in the city, there's distance factors too. So in a way, distance can mean something different, but it's a barrier, right? It's a barrier. Okay, over to Melody for your sense of challenges.
Just to build off of what Linda and Glenn has been saying, just to give a bit of background about myself that I didn't get into at first. I'm a practicing kindergarten teacher, but I just defended my master's in education neuroscience. I have a background in counseling and human development. And a lot of my research is focused on social emotional learning and the neurophysiological responses in collaborative learning. So what Linda has mentioned about teaching in rural areas where you're wearing many different hats and you are many roles of different people. And how Glenn has responded about budgets. I mean, budgets are budgets. There's nothing that as teachers we have any control over, right? But even as mentors and as mentor facilitators, we just do the best what we can to support and advocate for those that we are trying to work with. So since as educators, we're more aware and focused on SEL and emotional fitness of students, essentially we are here today because we are also looking at the emotional fitness and the social emotional learning and the betterment of those new teachers and how they are faring in their new assignments, right? So as a cohesive right now, we are looking at what steps are being taken or acknowledged to address this issue. And now we need to take a look at really what is the heart of the issue. Where is this anxiety stemming from? Where do we get this burnout and attrition rate from? This 30% of loss of top talent within the first 5 years, where they have the brand new pedagogical theories and practices. They've paid their university fees to go through, the rigmarole of these programs, and they get thrown into the Shark Tank, and they are ecstatic and they're energized to be in our classrooms. And what makes them say, forget this, I can't do this anymore? What has caused that shift in thinking? Now, one of the chapters in my thesis that I wrote about is a lot on the neurophysiological responses to stress. The human brain essentially is a social organ. Its physiological and neurological reactions are directly shaped by social interaction. So like Linda has mentioned that you are so many roles to so many people. Well, imagine you as a new teacher trying to figure out your role, your professional self-efficacy, your professional self-esteem, and then add that to the added pressures of your role in the community. When you're already treading water, you don't know the questions you need to know. You're trying to figure out as a TTOC, what am I supposed to do, right? I go into his classroom, this unknown area. Researchers have actually documented threat responses are often triggered in social situations. As a researcher, his name's Lieberman, he notes that Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory may be wrong in this respect, as the brain equates social needs actually with survival. A brain will actually perceive a social blow same as a perceived hit as a physical blow. So if an education system is inundated and teachers are overwhelmed, where they're trying to learn their new curriculum, they're trying to manage their new classrooms, and then you're asking them to collaborate, special projects, concerts, initiatives, and then Pro-D. It's just seeing that as extra. The research from SFU from my neuroscience lab and at Grammatron, they've looked at stress responses to teaching, emotional responses. And they find that when a teacher enters a room and they are stressed out, the front half of their brain completely shuts down. The stress response to social environment triggers burn up the oxygen and glucose from the brain, and they're diverted to the other parts of the brain. The sympathetic fight or flight system impairs working memory function, impairs analytic thinking, and even higher cognitive tasks. So essentially the frontal half of the prefrontal lobe shuts down and they're like panicking, right? This is where we panic and we find that space like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I was feeling that before coming up here. I couldn't eat dinner. And you get that panic, right? And then the problem solving skills, conflict resolution, creative insight, it's all shut down along with the prefrontal lobe. So no wonder the thought and the collaboration with another colleague is nothing but exhaustive, and then you end up with the closed door policies, right? How many teachers do you know teach with their doors closed? So you have these wonderful sage teachers that have been teaching for 20 plus years, and then you have a floundering teacher in the next room, and sometimes as leadership or even as a colleague, you're wondering why are they just not collaborating, right? So I'm looking at them as individuals. What are they personally struggling with? And why is a mentoring network essential and needed? Where I'm supporting someone in a completely different site when their own peers are not helping them.
So Melody, I'm going to ask you to cap it there.
Sure.
You brought a lot forward, and we're trying to keep our prefrontal lobes focused, and you're doing a great job. I think we need to just step back for a minute and have another quick table conversation. And I'm going to ask you, is there a question arising? Putting on your inquiry, curiosity. We're going to get back to the panel on challenges. But let's just have a check-in here. Is there a question arising from what we've said so far, or maybe you want to do a stimulating comment? Not going to leave you long here, 3 to 4 minutes, okay, at your tables. Right, thank you very much. We have a couple of more panelists on the challenges. And a hush came over the room. Thank you. Hush. All right, my Surrey friends back there. Hello. Thank you. Okay, so we have a couple of more panelists to address the challenges, and then there are some questions coming. We'll turn to a couple questions from the audience. So I think Monica and Maureen. Monica,
All right.
Challenges.
Challenges. We had an interesting little lively discussion here while you were talking It was about the rural metro situation. I'll just tell you a little bit. We were trying to generate in our Richmond team, what are some of the challenges, because my team was trying to prepare me a little bit for this. I guess they realized I might need a little food for thought. So we made well, the first challenge, and this I don't care where you, the classroom is an isolated place. So there you go, you got your new job, and that's where you get that, okay, now what am I going to do? Because suddenly there you are. So that's a given. What we were assuming is, and I think this is true, the initiation to teaching. I think teaching is a calling. You hear the call, but turning it into action is not so easy under current circumstances. We have many teachers who start as a TTOC and come back as a TTOC, and then finally get a temporary assignment, and then they get laid off, and then they have to start all over again. It's a long climb. I really respect the dedication of people who do that. But that makes for a very fragmented experience too, which means some kind of sense of connection has to be there, because you're not really connecting with the staff because you change schools all the time. You're not really connecting with your kids if you're only on temporary assignments. You are in the moment, but it's not that ongoing thing where you see them next year and then their little sister comes and all those things you get in the same sense of place and time. So we thought it's a patchwork experience, very challenging, and certainly our mentoring program, we do support TTOCs. We support teachers who get a sudden change in assignment. We support teachers on continuing contracts. And we support teachers in the early times, and it goes on for more than 1 year, of a continuing contract when they get to that point. So we assumed, well, this is a Metro thing. I have a word for this, actually, that in Metro, we call it Metrocentric. We kind of think it's all about us. So it's really interesting to hear Linda talk about the rural experience being exactly the same. So there's an assumption of mine that just got blown out of the water by listening to her. And that shows you the value of talking together. There's so many more commonalities. We don't get hung on place and space. What we need to pay attention to is, what is that initiation like? What is that professional experience like? How do you set the tone for future professional growth? It's such a pivotal time. So those are the barriers, and I think we're sharing them all. And soon we'll get to how we can go forward with that.
Okay, thank you very much. And the coming together of those qualities of assignment shifting, turnover, is what you say generic to wherever you live, and the initiation process of becoming a teacher. And I'd like to pull on a little bit of what Melody said around who am I, the identity, the internal landscape of becoming a teacher is a challenging one. Where do I fit? Where do I belong? Who am I? How do I define myself? All of those things are going on as well. So ultimately, the cup may empty out, and you say, I'm going to live it elsewhere. We're here because we don't want that to happen. We want the glass full, we want people to stay, and we want them to feel connected and belonging and growing. So just a little hope in the room, because when we talk about challenges, sometimes we start to sink a little. So over to you now, Maureen.
Oh, okay, sure. I think it's really important to talk about those challenges. Listen to Melody's voice. Listen to how heartfelt she is, and the amazing work that she's done with beginning teachers in our district. So really want to thank you for your voice and for reminding us about that reality. The piece for me is, there's not anyone in this room who doesn't know what she said to be true. So the question for me is, how do we pull together, and how do we create a call for action? So we know this, and really important to have those conversations, but I am personally about, so I'm just speaking from a personal level, is we've heard that. Thank you so much. And what Glenn said, what Linda said, what Monica said. So now what I'm curious about is, collectively you're here tonight, you're tomorrow. What is the call to action? How do we move this forward? How do we create, and how do we gather together these incredible people who've chosen to go into teaching. Okay, that is the most important job in the entire world from my perspective. I don't want to tell you how old I am and I'm still here because I'm so passionate about the work we do. We went into this, clearly we didn't go into this for money. Correct? We went into this to improve life chances for every kid on our planet. We went into this to make a difference for everyone. And what we know and what we've learned and what you see is we need to do this collaboratively and work together. So I'm, I don't know, maybe it's my age, but let's get together and do something that changes this. So it's important to talk about it. It's important to surface it. And my question and my curiosity is, where do we go from here? I hate to be so boring to come back to what we know. And what we know is when you gather people together, and just think, Melody, gathering people together that are coming into our system, and we gather them together on a regular basis to talk about what they're working on, what they're curious about, what their inquiry is. And we have that as a facilitated dialogue, and we pull them together as a network, and we work together with them as mentors and mentees, learning from them, because they've learned incredible things at university that sometimes we don't even honor. So what does that look like if we create provincially a teacher mentorship network, and that we raise this to the piece that we're saying, look, this matters to us. And I can tell you from my secondment to the ministry for the 3rd year, I can't believe they're going to second me again for the 4th year. They must be desperate because I'm so cheeky. But there is absolute hope. I have never felt so much hope and so much optimism about the ministry doing what they should do, and that's about getting out of our way, enabling us to move forward, supporting us, stimulating us, and getting out of the way with policy, with procedure. And again, and Glenn and I nudge each other. I'm just going to talk specifically about a teacher mentorship network and it being funded. Imagine that in your district. Imagine you pull together our colleagues that are just beginning in a system in a process of inquiry, and they met regularly as a group in facilitated dialogue and conversation about what they're passionate about. They cannot be alone. We know that, people. We have to work collaboratively. We have to work together. We have to come together with them, and I think there's huge potential to do that. And I challenge you all in this next couple of days, what can we do collectively to move it forward? We've heard the challenges. Let's come together, call for action, and move forward.
So that is the ultimate conclusion and aim for this evening, and I want to go there.
You know I didn't read that in the script.
Yeah, I feel like I've got this team of horses, and they're driving this, and we need to go there. And before we do, hold on, Maureen, we're going to ride this wave, is want to hear from Linda, and then anything else on the reality check. And I've got a couple of questions, and I commit that we're going to get to that. How do we move forward? Okay, we're going to get there. We're going to just step back a minute and answer a couple questions and hear from Linda.
Before you want to do the questions, okay, I just wanted to give an example of a small way to move forward that still talks about the challenges. But one of the things that has happened over the last 5 years is that we've been able to, with ministry support and ministry enabling policies, as well as support from the university, in my case, the University of British Columbia, to begin some small teacher networks. So for instance, last year, I decided to put together about 6 mentoring sessions with early career teachers who had, or even mid-phase teachers, but teachers who were new to rural settings. And the ones who responded, there were 11 who responded right away, and they were all in 1- or 2-room schoolhouses in BC. I didn't even know there were 11 1- or 2-room schoolhouses in BC. And there's actually more, I've found out. And we've got some people here from Atlin, so you know about really small schools. And what I noticed in sessions, we devoted one to bringing Christina McDonald from Vancouver Island North to come in and talk about online, talk about multigrade instruction, and give some really great strategies about that. And we had other sessions devoted to the fishbowl phenomenon of living in a school community or differentiated assessment, whatever it was. But what I noticed in these online sessions was all of these teachers were bubbling up with conversations over in the corner. It was like little strawberry rhizomes, you know, just popping up with, I've tried this. Have you tried this? This is a really good resource. This is a great book. Can I call you next week about a field trip we're trying to do that sounds a lot like what you tried to do in your situation? What we noticed was that with these very small connections, starting with these 11 teachers, and they were all over the province and were connected electronically, doing just Blackboard Collaborate was what they were all able to be connected to, was what we found is that from the small, you can start to scale up.
Yeah.
Because suddenly it wasn't 11, it was 220 a year later. And now we've got projects in 15, 16 districts, rural districts, and those teachers are all talking to each other. So I think I appreciate what you're saying about call to action and moving together collectively and all working together. But I think you can start by taking these small steps. And I think one way to meet the challenges and one way to actually talk about the challenges is to get people just connecting in small groups of like-minded individuals who have similar challenges and need to talk about those with each other, not just with perhaps experienced and expert help, but with each other and acknowledging each other's vulnerabilities, uncertainties, and also resources and strengths. Because what we saw was how quickly those rose to the surface.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to comment on that because one of the things we're realizing is that the most meaningful and effective professional growth for any professional at any point in their career is the chance to talk with other people,
Right.
get provoked, get stimulated, get challenged. It doesn't come from somebody giving you an in-service. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It prompts some thinking. But where that thinking begins to live and breathe is in that collaboration and inquiring together about what does this mean. So it really speaks to across the board, no matter where you are in your career. We have to start looking at that as meaningful professional growth and not something that you just get to do once in a while. It should be part of your job. It's what keeps you alive and growing in it.
So I'm going to bring in a question from the floor that ties directly to this. In fact, it's resonating loudly. And the question is just about these professional conversations, which I think for many of you who are involved in supporting mentorship programs have embedded conversations in your work. The questioner says there are types of professional learning, inquiry groups, book study, professional conversations that are mentorship related, and goes on to say how much of our professional learning is about how to engage and benefit from these professional conversations. You mentioned them. Monica built on it. I'm wondering if other panelists want to comment on this notion of the fluidity between quality professional learning and specific foci on our early career teachers. In fact, the boundary is not necessarily separate. We're there to support their growth, right? So other comments on quality professional learning and conversations? Anybody up here?
Well, when I'm listening to this and I'm listening to Linda, you know what? There is no one way. And I think, in the work that we've done around professional learning, we have to be very careful we don't design one way. There's a multiplicity of ways in. And just like we talk about kids with the multiplicity of ways of learning, I think we too need to be very careful that we're offering a multiplicity of ways of coming in on professional learning. The most important thing is that we all continue to learn. You know, the only difference between me and a beginning teacher is I have incredible comfort with the dissonance of not knowing.
I'll add to that.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, and I think that last point actually is an extremely important one, because teachers can be awfully anxious some of the time about letting others know that they don't know, or they might have been wrong, and learning from one's mistakes can be really important too. But I think part of the question on the sheet gets to this whole notion of sort of informal opportunities to engage in professional dialogue, to always be growing, and that's important for everyone who calls himself a professional from the start of their career to their end of their career. But I'm heartened by a lot of the even the weekly Kinder Chat conversations on Twitter every week. Teachers mostly from around BC, but around the world, supporting one another in professional dialogue about, hey, I tried this out in my class the other day. Then there ended up being something that was found in the schoolyard ended up in the sandbox, and how do I deal with that sort of stuff. But two various sort of, I'm considering a new assessment method in my classroom, and I'm not sure how to communicate that to the parents of my students. Can you help me out with that? And those sorts of things are happening all the time. We're not necessarily recognizing those as mentoring per se or professional dialogue, but they truly are. But that still needs to be accompanied by opportunities for more sort of formal, structured things that are there, consistent. And so it's both. And I guess the other aspect too is for people to be modeling. That regardless of where they are in their career, that they're modeling, that they're always willing to learn something new, that teaching is changing all the time, and so they're availing themselves of opportunities to hone their skills, to expand their thinking, to learn that they were wrong about what they were doing, and perhaps try a different way, and not be afraid to take those chances. It's important that we nurture a school context, a school community context, where it's okay to take risks, knowing that sometimes risks don't work out.
Yeah. That seems to be one of the things that when we talk about the roles of mentors, and there are many roles of for mentors, and sometimes they can be cultural interpreters and translators, and in rural areas there's certainly that. In urban areas too, in metro areas, they become translators of school culture, but they also become the people who support that risk-taking and are examples of comfort with dissonance and comfort with uncertainty and not knowing. And when you talk about accountability and an audit culture or an accountability culture that we seem to be more and more driven toward, those teachers in that audio talked about a different kind of accountability, an accountability to their kids, an accountability to the community, to the families. Mentors can start to shape that and say, yes, it's okay to try this. It's okay to jump off the edge once in a while, at least look over the edge, and we'll help you do that, and we'll be there if you fall. And the accountability can still be there, but perhaps it's a different kind of accountability. It's an accountability that's much more directly back to your students, back to the profession, back to learning, and not so much the accountability of evidence and data that seems to drive so much of the uncertainty and the vulnerabilities here. How can I prove that what I'm doing is okay? How can I prove that my students are learning and successful and engaged? So mentors can help do that, shape that.
Yeah, Melody, you wanted to have a word on this one, and then we're going to unleash the where do we go from here and how can we build this network?
Just to comment quickly on uncertainty and predictability, I have an interesting anecdote. There's a researcher who studies chronic stress named Robert Sapolsky. He writes this wonderful book called Why Don't Zebras Get Ulcers? And so he studied the hierarchy system of test monkeys out in the wild, and he messed up the hierarchy system. He would shift it every month or so. And then him and his team of researchers would go and take their blow darts and knock the monkeys out. I'm not saying we suggest we do this with new teachers, but he would knock these monkeys out, and it was actually a National Geographic documentary, and these monkeys are like passed out on their tables, and they're taking their blood and measuring their glucocorticoid levels, so their cortisol levels, their stress hormone levels. And they found that the subject group where the monkeys, where the hierarchy was always shifted, they were way stressed out because they didn't know where they stood with one another. And then the ones that they knew there was an allostatic equilibrium. The groups that knew where they stood, it was the same, you know who's the leader, you know who's what and what's what, they were just fine. Even if there was like a giant attack from a panther, they were fine. But, and then another researcher at Kaplan University did the same thing, but without the crazy threats of a predator. All they did was use lab mice and studying loss of predictability and this trigger of the stress hormone and the study of physiological allostasis, this equilibrium. All they did was you have a cage of mice where they're fed at regular intervals. There was predictability. And then there was another cage of mice where they were all fed at totally messed up intervals. And that was just a simple study. And they looked at the stress hormones in the mice that had predictability and the mice that did not have predictability. Mm-hmm. And of course, the mice without predictability, they developed heart disease. They developed, like heart attack plaques. And that is a symptom of chronic stress. Now, apply this to human models. And we're looking at predictability. Predictability allows us to have predictive information of what coping strategy to use when we don't know what's coming, right? And as Maureen said, you're okay with not knowing. You're okay with the dissonance. You've come to terms with the allostasis disequilibrium.
It's the gray hair.
No, it's not. Yeah. There's no gray, honey.
No, I dyed it. I paid a lot of money for that.
So, as a challenge, if we had this wonderful province-wide teacher mentorship initiative, if we had this network, could that not be the predictability? Could that not be, as change agents, can that not be the allostatic equilibrium that teachers can always count on?
I think the answer is yes. Yay!
Don't you love how brave Melody is for being up here? Like, really, I think you should give her really a
I'm like
big
so
clap.
scared.
Come on. Come on. That's great.
Okay, I'm going to connect this to another question, which is the notion of moving beyond mentor programs to an attitude of reciprocal partnerships, co-mentoring for all of us in the system. And I think that's our goal when there's a questioner here about how do you grow a culture of mentorship when you graduate from the mentorship program. What then? I just heard a really good question a couple of weeks ago, like, well, we still have teachers who have been teaching 3 years and they need to be in the program, and the program sometimes closes the door because the, quotes, concept is after 2 years you're flying on your own. So I think this idea of stability, predictability is also one of inclusivity and reciprocal support for more, if not all, which brings us back to professional growth, professional learning. We need to support our early career so that they will become mentors for others. And if you have a mentoring attitude and you've come through a supportive induction, you will likely notice and take action where the teacher next door in your school or down the hall needs support. So really that's what I want to create as our vision, is a sense of a culture of mentorship where we have personal responsibility as well as collective responsibility to turn there and be there for our colleagues. So with that and all the conversation we've had so far, let's get to Maureen's question. What is the call to action? How can panelists, we all pull together to create a culture of mentorship in British Columbia. I know that Lois is going to touch on this tomorrow, so hang in. You're going to get some answers tomorrow. But for now, what are the next steps that will be powerful, inclusive, creative, and build connections between all the great work you're already doing? I know that out there. So we can get a stronger foundation under this work. So with that integration, who would like to offer, beyond what we've already heard from Linda, which was fabulous, start small and build, scale up, open the door to conversations, what else can we do as practical and directive as you wish? This is your go forward. Who's ready to jump in on that one?
Well, I'll start.
All right.
To start,
Take a list.
Go, girl.
because I think one of the things we need to do is, we talk about instilling norms of collaboration in beginning teachers. And the other part, which I would like to mention, is being a mentor is the most amazing leadership development opportunity for teachers. Teachers are leaders, but we often don't make that explicit. So you learn the skills to really listen, to facilitate, to say what that person needs to hear as opposed to telling them what you know. And that's actually important. I know research on mentors have found that they need to be trained to do that, or else there's a tendency to just kind of sit around the campfire telling the war stories. Well, when I started teaching, which we could do a little of that too. But it's a really concerted effort to establish norms of collaboration and help mentors learn the skills that it takes to really listen to people and collaborate, and you spread that through a system. So the other thing is, I think we don't really connect these things. Like mentoring is very connected to professional learning communities, which is very connected to teacher inquiry, which is very connected to the kind of live, vibrant culture of professional growth that we all want to support, no matter where we come from in a system. So linking these things together is really important. You start with those norms, but then you develop it in different ways. So it's organic, as opposed to someone coming and doing something to you. But somebody in my position, you have to support the infrastructure to make it happen. You have to make sure that the funding is there. You have to make sure that the support is there as you embark on your journey or help other people continue theirs. So it's a habit of mine, but also linking our notion of professional growth, getting away from the idea that it's something you do on certain days of the year when somebody comes in and probably presents something kind of useful, to a way of life as a professional. And then they all connect. So we all have to put our heads together. How do we build this in and legitimize it? Because it's not just an informal, fun thing. It's actually kind of the warp and woof of being a professional in this profession that we all share of teaching.
Well, I'm not going to give a full answer right now, but one of this habit of mind concept that Monica just threw out, I think Melody alluded to this earlier in the sense of this culture of isolation that occurs in some schools, whether it's the closed door phenomenon, or even if the door is closed, I'm not necessarily checking in with my peers, either to tell them, ask them for help, or ask them how they're doing. But one of the secret weapons that's already available actually are our provincial specialist associations that are out there, whether it's the math one or the middle years intermediate teachers association or primary or whatever it happens to be, networks of teachers beyond our schools and beyond our districts who are there to support. And they might not be doing mentor-specific things per se, but at least there are people who have a real love and passion for their subject areas or for their sort of educational philosophic areas to engage people in those conversations, for there to be sort of a network to turn to when you need help. So part of the answer for me is sort of how to grow these even more and get more people involved. But going back to Monica's sort of earlier point, too, a lot of this does come down to sort of political choices in terms of what gets prioritized and what doesn't. And I'm not thinking just provincially, but sort of at all levels, at the school district, within all of our various professional organizations, as well as at the province as well. What will give social license for everyone to be saying, yes, we'll invest in this, whether it's investment of money or whether it's investment of time or just a statement of support to make it happen. And it's those little pieces that add up to making a change.
Okay, so we have small steps and some pieces, existing structures, a habit of mind that anytime, anywhere in professional learning or in our PSAs, that we can connect and think like reciprocal learners and mentors for each other. I'm keen to hear what other ideas might be perking up here. Maybe let's look this way. Linda, Melody, moving forward. How can we grab the reins and move this forward?
Can I?
Go ahead.
If you're ready.
I'm ready. One of the things I would personally like to see is more collaboration between teachers and leadership, administration. I truly believe that a school's tone is set by leadership. I do believe that the administration that we have are vetted for a reason. They are placed in the school culture for a reason, to try to maintain the allostatic equilibrium of the school, whether it's with the community, with the parents, or with the staff. But I would love to see a mentorship, more collaboration, especially in our district, between our mentoring facilitators and with district DLT, the district leadership team, or with the just administrators that are interested in collaborating and really working on setting that tone, because not only is the emotional and social emotional fitness of staff important, I truly believe that the emotional fitness of the administrator and administration is equally as important. And in a time when there are budget crunches and we just make do with what we have, and we all work towards what is the betterment of the school. We all want what is best for the kids in the end. I would honestly love to see more collaboration with leadership.
Okay, so if no one up here is jumping in, we have a question that relates to this, and I'm just going to probe this a little bit. This questioner would like you to comment on the need to convince or work with school principals that mentorship is important, because they are the ones who see the strengths and weaknesses of their staff. They should be here at this conference. Where are they? So this was a kind of you're here. So that's what I was going to ask. Where are you, principals? I'm sure you're here. Administrators. Yay, we're here. Great. Great. So they are here. That rounds out, the different roles that people play. So pushing your comment a little bit into, the collaboration between the teacher and the principal, and your empathy for everyone having the stress and the attendance of you. The questioner wants to know, how do we get more engagement, perhaps, from school administration? Could someone speak to that up here?
Yeah, I think we have to, we have to look after each other. It is so critically important we don't blame anyone. There are incredible administrators in this system doing an unbelievable job in mentoring and caring about it. Equally, there's teachers that don't care about it. So I just want to say, let's be very careful. For me, the blaming game is over. I'm so tired of hearing, why didn't this teacher do this? Why? It's over, people. We need to care about one another. We need to work collectively. We need to come together and collaborate. And no, the question for me, again, I know I'm so boring, I get that part, is to come back. We have to stop this blaming. Why didn't the grade 12 teachers do this for English in university? Why didn't the grade 3 teachers teach the kids to read? It goes on and on. We have got to stop and start moving forward and taking care of one another. They're incredible administrators, incredible superintendents, incredible teachers that care about mentorship. Could we just build on that and move forward? Let's build on what we have in this. The culture in this province is incredible. Let's stop talking about what we're not and start talking about what we are, and how do we move it forward. You think you don't have a voice? I spent 3 years seconded at the ministry. You have a voice. Where is it? Where's the call to action? What is it you're demanding? And let's go. Just do it. And let's work together. Let's stop blaming anybody. And look, what we care about is looking after one another, coming together collaboratively. It's rocket science. It's not rocket science, I'm sorry, in British Columbia. We know bringing groups of people together, building on their expertise, building on their wisdom. I just spent the entire day with 250 teachers, superintendents, ABED support teachers, district principals at Changing Results for Young Readers. You think we changed the conversation in this province by not working together? Well, we didn't. We did it, we had a goal, we had a call to action, we moved it. And we lobbied for money, and we keep fighting for it. Okay, it's no different with teacher mentorship. We've got an incredible culture right now. Let's take advantage of it before the politics change once again. We got at least 2 more years. Let's do it. Let's move. Let's work together. And you know what? I don't even want to talk about a teacher mentorship program. This is not about a program.
No.
People, this is about a way of being. Do you not know what British Columbia has done? We're incredible. Let's go. I know I'm boring, but let's do it.
So, panelists, let's go. Anything more specifically we can do? We have connections, we have the will, we have the hope. Anything more anyone would like to add on this call to action piece before we close and hand it off to Allison?
Well, I kind of want to jump in as a teacher educator, working to prepare teachers, because I think there is a need to have a more seamless continuum of learning right across that starts with the pre-service and moves all along a career. So I think that conversation about collaboration, which we have at pre-service, but I think we need to make that as well a part of the everyday culture that those students come in and see and are part of and are constructing from the very beginning. So I think we need more partnerships right from the beginning. I'm working with a small teacher education program, a kind of UBC satellite campus in the West Kootenays. We're moving it to the schools next year. We're embedding teacher preparation into clusters of schools. And each school will take 3, 4, 5 students and adopt them. And the idea behind that is that we need to see that we can all learn from each other. Those are going to be mentor teachers working with our students. Our students are going to have things to teach them too. And the administrators are supportive and excited. And it's a way to think about a seamless continuum. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be seamless in practice. It's going to have all kinds of bumps and features on the landscape. But it's an attempt to embed that notion of this is something you're going to be doing for a long time. You're not going to stop that conversation about learning. It's going to start here and it's going to keep going. So I think that's another piece that needs to be addressed.
And Linda, wouldn't it be nice if that seamless continuation was seamlessly continued through all the pre-service teaching programs? So that conversation could be had between UBC, SFU, and so no teacher is left out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, reach for the top. This is the short snapper time, last chance to say what you wish. We just I'm going to go down the panel. Any last words? Any notions of hope? Any specific suggestions? And I'm going to play in this game, so when I close, I'm going to say something. Okay, let's start with Monica.
I think Maureen is so right. If we can get beyond dwelling on who does what to whom, et cetera, and start recognizing the synergy that we have between us that really mobilizes the kind of support and growth we talk about, we can get somewhere. I think one of the things you learn is you can't wait for somebody else to make it happen. You have to make it happen together. Together we move ahead. And that's really key. Together we energize each other, and together we get results. So that's my last word, I think.
Okay. Maureen, have you had many last words?
I think I kind of had one.
Okay.
I
all
do,
right.
except to say,
I knew it.
you love it.
Get ready.
I have never, I'm going to say it again, please people, I have never been more optimistic and more hopeful. But the key to it is we need to come together in our cultures. You think we would have moved Changing Results for Young Readers forward had we not had an incredible relationship with the BCTF? We wouldn't have. I'm done with the adversarial relationships. We need to work together. We need to think together. We need to be together. We need to be curious together. We need to know we can do it. And with that kind of passion, we will move this forward. I'm seeing a BC Teacher Mentorship Network fully funded by the Ministry of Education. I'm all for it. What do you say?
All right.
Right, my last word.
And Glenn partners with the ministry.
Adding on that, well, the whole partners thing, I mean, you won't see this on one of Keith Baldry's newscasts, but there actually is a huge amount of collaboration that's going on all the time between the various partner groups, between the BCTF and the ministry, between the superintendents and various groups and everything like that. There's lots going on. It just doesn't make for sexy news stories.
No, so you don't
or it doesn't fit within the sort of narrative that, that the media wants to tell. And so it's how do we're forever trying to get those stories out and everything like that, but often our own sort of people in the room don't necessarily know it either. And so it's we have to sort of keep doing that and tell those stories to one another. Because it is happening, and there needs to be more of it, and create the climate so it increases.
Yeah, and change the narrative. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I had my last word.
You had your turn. Melody?
My last word, really, I have to go back to my old PDP adage by Parker Palmer, we teach who we are. If we give up the adversarial stance, if we really keep our eye on the prize and realize that why we are here is for our students, it's for our kids. If we are healthier teachers, if we are healthier leadership, if we are supporting one another, we are stronger together. That's all I got.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Linda?
Well, I'm going to go back to a small example, small story. I do think we have to change the narratives that get out there.
I really do.
And I think we have to make sure that we've got the stories in the news that celebrate. I just came back from Texas, and I talked to some very dispirited teachers who have been systematically divided from one another, so that through a culture of competition and constant auditing of standards and accomplishments and achievements, and they've been pulled apart. We don't live in a place like that. Yeah. Even amongst all of that going on, I found pockets of really promising practices and wonderful things to celebrate. But I was so happy to get back to British Columbia. That and the gun laws were a bit scary. I do think we can change those stories. The ministry has been asking for stories to get out there, and I think one of the things we have to do is come up with ways that all of us are telling the stories of the successes, the things that are happening in our classrooms, in our schools, the relationships that are changing with communities. In the rural world I work in, the examples of intergenerational learning, of celebrating and really finding out about the heritages and the identities of people in your place, the kinds of place-conscious efforts that are going on. We need to be able to talk about those. We need to be able to get them out. But nobody is going to come to find those stories. Nobody's going to dig them up. So I don't know whether we start just doing the old, whatever the electronic or digital version of getting those flyers out, and going back to that sort of revolutionary zeal of just getting the word out. You people are doing wonderful things. We have a lot to be proud of, and a lot of collaborations that nobody ever knows about. Right. And as you say, it's because it doesn't make the 6 o'clock news. Mm-hmm. So we have to find other ways to get it to the media and get it known. That's the way those narratives are going to change. So, and mentorship is something to celebrate in many, many places in BC. But you're right, Maureen, we got to bring it together. So, and that's all I got.
You had a lot. So we want to close this panel, but not close the energy and the possibilities of where you might go next. My comment is, I think we've had iterations of networks growing and expanding in this province that are real models to look at. What started as the Young Writers and then the Network of Performance-Based Schools, who is now the Network for Innovation and Inquiry. What we're doing with the results, reading for results, have I got that name right? If you dissect those, there is investment of money. There's leadership at the top. The province comes forward. The districts get going. They bring in the partners, and they put force behind it. And I think that is where this has to go. And so we need to tap into those people who are influential to say, let's take the money that is coming, and Allison is going to talk about this, and have an organizing session with all the voices in the room and say, let's create a network that cannot topple over. In 2016, 18, or beyond my retirement, my second retirement, I don't want to feel we have to start again. So let's not tinker. Let's do it in a strong way. But you have to lace the resources together with the influential people to say, this matters, let's do it. So, neutral facilitator up until about 5 minutes ago. And then I wanted to add my voice that, yes, I think that's where we have to go. We had to start with the awareness of the voices of our teachers, talk about the challenges, and then reset the agenda. I hope we've done that in some way for you tonight.